Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring the Yamato, the tier 10 IGN battleship, one of the oldest battleships in the game, and once again we're going to be focusing on positioning, namely central positioning, because yes, that is something that I greatly enjoy and that is something that I consider highly important on almost all maps. There are some exceptions where central positions aren't necessarily always the best, and some ships can pull off exceptional flanking moves thanks to incredible speed, like for example Georgia. But in general, a central position in the battleship tends to be the most favorable position, hence my focus on it. Whenever I'm in doubt where to go, I always end up going in the center. Because regardless of where the enemy goes, regardless of where my team goes, I can always react and reposition from there. Now, the difference between the Jean Bart and the Yamato is namely that in the Yamato, you do want to go where the enemy is pushing. In the Jean Bart, I focused very much on creating crossfires and catching people unawares. And now there's nothing wrong with doing that in the Yamato, you can do it as well. But keep in mind that the Yamato has incredibly sluggish turret traverse, and it's significantly slower. I think it might be one of the slowest tier 10 BBs, and it has a significant citadel. All of this means that you really don't want to get any closer to medium range unless it's a bow in situation or a stern in situation. And of course the difference is that you have 460mm guns, which means you can overmatch enemies, which also means that what I will be doing a lot in this vid is going where the enemy is pushing. Putting myself in such a situation that I can take basically 1 versus 1 fights with enemy battleships. Because those I am very good at dealing with. In this case though, it looks like they are sending a fair bit of ships down towards A, and here I decide to turn out. For multiple reasons. The enemy has 2 DDs. I don't know where the second DD is. Is he charging into B? Is he charging between B and C? Is he going between A and B and potentially going to push into center? And of course the fact that they have a Thunder and they have an Ohio and all this. So if I do push up into the center and I start getting HE spammed and potentially yielded by a DD, I'll get myself killed. There is very little benefit in that, and it's not like I'll be able to secure B myself anyway. So in this case, we angle away from the threat. Note that the ships on the C flank the enemy ships are going very wide. If the enemy ships were playing more aggressive, this position wouldn't work because I would be exposing broadside to them. You see me glance in that direction, but they are playing extremely safe and extremely far back, which means that there's nothing stopping me from taking my time and carefully taking aim on this flank while exposing all this broadside to them. Central position is once again my focus because, well, in a standard teammate fashion, well, in standard almost all battleship fashion, you can see my 2 Montanas. They're on D8 and they are going towards that 9 to 10 line. In fact, you'll find them going both towards the 10 line. My Musashi on the other hand is moving towards the 1 line, and my Vladivostok looks like he's going to follow the Montanas. So once again, I'm the only battleship in the center. And that's fortunate because their Minotaur is actually doing a fairly audacious move of trying to YOLO into B. Now, when you're shooting cruiser in this situation, you want to be patient. You want to wait until he's committed to whatever move he's making. In this case, if he keeps turning right, he's gonna ground, but he knows I'm about to shoot him, so he's trying to bait on that. But I wait patiently. I wait until he's fully grounded, and only then do I shoot, and Yamato's amazing guns, especially with the legendary mod, have no issues of deleting him. If a cruiser puts himself in that position, basically he's got an island between himself and his escape route. He has 2 options: sail full broadside or turn into you, or do what that guy did, panic turn to the right to try to avoid, but in the process grounding. Basically, never put yourself into that position because it's a terrible cruiser position. So I've helped defend B now, and it looks like we have so much firepower on C. In fact, looking at it, like the Montanas are going all the way around, so they're not really going to be able to push through C yet. And I want to try to help deal with this Yamato that is pushing straight into A. In fact, they got a fair few ships pushing around this flank, and with the spotter plane and the range, and of course these guns, I can easily contribute and help. Keeping an eye out on the carrier as well. This is a game with a carrier, so even if it is a tier 8, Yamato's AA isn't exactly stellar, so I am playing it a bit safe to make sure that if it starts focusing me, I'm not left completely on my own. It looks like the Yamato is committing to this push, so we're just going to patiently wait. The further he pushes in, the more crossfired he's going to get. You do not want to push into objectives this early in a Yamato. You really don't. It's too easy to crossfire, it's too easy to farm, and this is a classical positioning mistake. He doesn't see any foes, so he thinks it's safe, but I'm behind an island, able to shoot him from the center, and the rest of my team are on the flank, able to shoot him from that angle. So he has to choose which foe to deal with. Note that if this was another battleship, for example a Kremlin, I would never give as much broadside as I am, but this also comes down to game knowledge. Yamato's turret traverse, as I mentioned earlier on, is very poor, hence I'm not afraid to give him broadside, because if he starts turning his guns towards me, I got all the time in the world to actually react and angle away. And because the enemy battleships are still so far back on the H line, I can turn to the left, giving broadside to them to angle against the Yamato. I'm glancing in that direction to make sure. I have the option of disengaging that way. Basically, Yamato is all about making sure you're never in a situation where you're forced to expose full broadside to any ship. Because the second you're forced to expose full broadside, and if they have the guns ready, you tend to get citadeled quite heavily in the Yamato. So this crossfire position allows us to pick up a second kill, the Yamato trying to push into A. You note that Yamato's playstyle is really good at this. Punishing anyone trying to push into you. This is what the Yamato does well. It's because of these incredibly punchy guns, it's because of this overmatch capacity, so you can just go where the enemy is pushing, and generally speaking, as long as your escape route is visible and you have an option to disengage, you can be extremely frustrating for the enemy to deal with. In this case though, the enemy does cap A. My team has played so far back, my carrier isn't spotting, my Worcester is way out of radar range, my Seattle is way out of radar range. I think that Yamato pushing in kind of spooked them away. So this has given the enemy a lot of map control on A. And I know they're probably going to start moving towards B afterwards, so my plan is to eventually move there. But that doesn't mean I can't take potshots on, once again, high priority ships, in this case, Donskoy. The reason being that long range radar, which is the reason I assume my gearing is sitting here behind the island. I don't actually know at this point, but this guy has DC'd behind the island. I think at least. I see a bit of smoke, I'm not sure. No, I think he's fully DC'd behind the island. But I thought at the time that he was hiding from the radar, and that's why I was trying to deal with the Donskoy to open up the opportunity for my DD to push more aggressive into the camp. Regardless, we have turned our ship around, and once again, I never want to stray too far away from the center. That's where I feel a battleship always excels. So in this case, we turn away from these ships and we move towards B to try to defend it. Now it's probably a Z-52 in B, but at this point I assume that if he's in B, he's torping the Montana, if anything, and ultimately it is a Z-52. If it was a Shimakaze, I would probably give him a bit more respect, but because it's a Z-52, I'm not too worried about his torpedoes. North Carolina exposes a significant amount of broadside, which I'm hoping I'll be able to punish, but in this game I have some rather peculiar RNG. I only get one Europen, at least the back turret does get a citadel in, so we do get some damage, but not exactly the optimal volley that I could have hoped for. That could easily have been a devastating. Z-52 is in fact contesting the cap, and he's still pretty far back, so I realize, he's probably torping me, trying to turn out to make sure I don't get caught, and of course trying to push in to make sure that I can get gun angles in on him. He did in fact drop torpedoes on me, and I will be catching a couple, but once again, Z-52 torps combined with Yamato's incredible torpedo belt, not exactly world-ending, and they can't really HE spam me to death after using damage con, because my positioning is on a map like this, in the center behind multiple islands. It's very easy for me to disengage in any direction that I choose. Putting pressure on their ships disengaging from the flank. This is something that you can do when you're centrally positioned. When an enemy team pushes into flanks, you can punish them. When they disengage from your team pushing those flanks, you can punish them a second time. There is never a situation where you're in the center of the map and you lack anything to shoot. Most of the time, it's picking the optimal target and angling against the optimal target. That's the challenge. It looks like my Wooster is actually going to push in and contest this cap. I consider this a very, very risky maneuver, but because he is doing it, I'm going to try to give him some space, especially since this Ohio seems to be guarding the objective. Ohio is of course an excellent brawler, and here you're actually going to see some of the craziest RNG ever, and this is when I said what I meant when I said I have some really weird RNG this game, and it's not the good kind. A full volley at his nose, which I match, I get four full pens and a shatter, and not a single one of the pens deals any damage whatsoever. So that was a full 0 damage volley with 5 Yamato shells on basically a broadside Ohio. I wish my ship worked like that. Regardless though, by shooting him and forcing him to focus on me and deal with me, hopefully it's buying my Wooster enough time to disengage away from the cap and just stay alive while securing the objective. Note that once again, we are angling heavily against him, we are making sure we don't spark in front of the torps, and more importantly, we don't want to get caught. If the Ohio decides to YOLO us, decides to rush us, well, we do have a lot of team support, but we still don't want to end up in a situation where we can get rammed, so obviously we don't sit nose in. Rarely, if ever, do I want to sit nose in a Yamato, when it's usually just so much more intelligent to sit stern in and have the option to disengage if need be. The volley, not the citadels I had hoped for, but I do blap him a fair bit and force him to disengage and leave that B objective alone. Which is ultimately exactly what I wanted. Sovietsky Soyuz is spotted again, the ship I shot earlier, and I'm looking for an opportunity to give my team a lead, because we are behind on the points. I'm trying to get my team to focus the A cap, because, well, in classic style, they're of course sailing around the objective instead of going into it. It's a completely uncontested objective with no enemies nearby, so there's not really much reason not to secure it. The enemy team has pushed through C. I left the side, and now they started pushing it that side. So I'm gonna try to get into a position to help them, reverse into a position where I can help deal with that, while at the same time harassing the ships in the center that are trying to disengage. Center is often a keyword that I use, because playing in center tends to just give you so much action. When people complain about boring games, I'm like, well, you can't be playing a Battleship, because if you take a Battleship to a central position, there's never a boring moment. That's basically how it works. There's just so much to shoot, especially on smaller maps like this one. The Drake does not eat a single citadel. I think it was like 3 overpens and a pen. And once again, yeah, RNG not really working the way I would hope in this game. Yamato tends to be very, very good at blapping cruisers. Well, very good at blapping everything. But this Drake, well, he's got a fair dose of RNG working in his favor. The Udaloy is harassing me, and the SID-52 has pushed into a gap. There is in fact a sizable force pushing through, but none of them are capable of overmatching me, and they're still too far away to torpedo me, so I'm more focused on trying to harass and dealing with this central flank, trying to force them back as far as possible to give my team more map control. Because that is ultimately the goal of playing in the center. You want to help your team get more map control. Popping a heal, accelerating a bit, turning away. I'm not afraid to give broadside now because the Ohio is pushed so far back. I'm not afraid that he's suddenly going to turn his guns and blap me. I make sure that I push to put the island between me and the Ohio, that in case he decides to shoot me, or in case the Thunder decides to shoot me, I have a lot of terrain behind me and them. And only once I have secured my broadside, this is important, only once I have secured my broadside and I know there's not going to be some crazy volleys coming in that can blap me, only then do I angle and start harassing the ships that are pushed into our spawn. The Graf Zeppelin and Rune can easily deal with the Udaloy, but the NC might be a problem, and obviously that is something that the Yamato deals with so well. Enemy nose-in battleships. 32mm overmatch is exactly what Yamato excels at dealing with, so that's what I'm gonna start focusing on. Note that I don't push any further than this. I don't want to leave the center. Center is where we shine, center is where those Yamato guns can reach all over the map, so obviously I don't want to leave it. I want to stay here. I just want to get far enough away that I'm not going to get blapped or torpedoed or anything similar. Once I have a good angle and a good position. They too tried to take some pot shots, you saw that? But I'm too far behind the island for them to actually be able to hit me. That's very important in the Yamato. It's one of the key concepts of the Yamato. Well, in all battleships, protecting your broadsides, but especially in the Yamato because of the size of your citadel. Now I'm suspecting this Thunder might be pushing here, so I'm gonna try to angle in and see if I can maybe get an unexpected flank in on him. I'm far enough away because of course stealth build that Udala cannot see me, so ideally the Thunder should not be prepared for me coming out from here because he's focused on what's going on inside B itself. A bit risky because there's a chance that he might be sitting right in front of me with guns pointed my way. And that's exactly where he is, but he was focused on B. He's turning his guns to shoot, but I'm of course in a full turn to angle my armor as much as possible. And my broadside, well, they splash into the water and I think I shatter some of the shells as well with that thick broadside armor. As long as you're not full broadside, as long as you angle that broadside, it becomes pretty tanky. But keep in mind, of course, that the Yamato does have frontal cheek weaknesses and stern cheek weaknesses. I'm low underneath the turret, and yep, that RNG of today keeps showing itself. 2 shatters and a bounce on the Thunder at 9.3 kilometers with Yamato guns. Somewhat bemused at this point about how uncooperative my RNG is. I start aiming higher on his belt to make sure I get pens. This Thunder is in a really bad position now because of my position, because he's got a Musashi crossfiring him from the center and me shooting him from here. Well, I'm kind of the one causing the crossfire here, but regardless, he's basically dead meat because both of us overmatch his armor, which is why I'm completely flabbergasted about one of the most common mistakes I see, and that is what my Musashi is doing. Unnecessary ramming of enemy ships. I see this so often. I see it on so many Battleship players. It doesn't matter what situation, they see a ram opportunity, they go for a ram. In this case, we were 5 versus 5, we were about to turn it into a 5 versus 4, and he ran in and made it a 4 versus 4 instead. So the game is by no means settled yet. There's still a chance. I mean, we're 530 to 515. And he decides to throw away his ship on a crossfired Thunder that can be overmatched. It's baffling because of how common that is. I see ships ram all the time without actually taking into account when is a good opportunity, when is a good moment to ram. They just go for it. This Drake, that's the Drake I shot earlier. I think he's trying to YOLO me. In fact, I'm pretty confident that's his plan, but I do have my spotter plane up to provide me vision of anyone sneaking up on me, and I do know where the Udala is. So I'm gonna try reverse until I can get a good angle on him, and then we're gonna start accelerating. Whenever a cruiser is YOLOing you like this, a cruiser is going ham for you, ideally you want to go for the full blap as it comes around the corner, but don't count on the blap being successful. Start kiting away as soon as you know he's committed. You wait until he commits, and once he's guaranteed committed, that's when you absolutely start kiting away. I go for the blap. He survives with 275 health and gets his heal off. But we didn't count on the blap working, so we're already accelerating, already creating distance, and already making it so hard for him to get that YOLO off. This is the best way of dealing with any sort of YOLO in cruisers. You just start kiting away. Your guns at this range have no issues to completely shattering him, so just keep running away. I citadel him, which is of course more than enough damage to kill him, but somehow he actually manages to get the detonation out of the citadel, which is, once again, I have come to the conclusion that that Drake was very, very blessed by RNG this match. In killing the Drake, the game is basically secure. There is of course a chance if my Rune and my Zeppelin dies, and if I somehow really mess up in the last minute, but ultimately this game is pretty much guaranteed won. And somewhat amusingly, I am still kind of in the center of the map. This is the kind of map where, once again, I played around B, but I stayed on my side of the map. And that is because this is the kind of map that if you want to play on, you don't really want to play on the other side of B in a battleship. You rarely do, because you commit so hard on this map. It's so hard to disengage, and when you get to the other side of B, you're basically fully committed into the enemy spawn. I turn my guns, the Lexington gets spotted by the Graf Zeppelin planes. I didn't shoot the DD because I saw the planes coming in, so I knew he was going to get detected. And a stationary Zeppelin against Lexington against Yamato guns has absolutely no chance, and he gets devastated with 3 citadels. I get my Kraken unleashed, with Yamamoto of course faster reload, but sadly it's a bit too late in this game to actually make it work. Taking a potshot at the Udaloi, but the match ends before the shells can actually land. So this was I would say a fairly classic Yamato game. Note that at no point did I feel the pressure to push in anywhere. You can keep map control and you can keep vectors on all your targets without suiciding in. And this is what I mean when I ask my battleships to play, like have a more meaningful role, they often take it as I'm trying to tell them that they need to YOLO in or they need to go cap the objective. No, just be in a position where anyone who tries to sail into any objective, you can blap them. And that's exactly what I was doing here. You saw anytime one of the ships went, the Minotaur went in the center, blapped him. The NC tried to push one flank, blapped him. Yamato tried to push into the other cap, blapped him. And that's what I want from battleship play. That's what battleships are so good at. You can influence any spotted ship trying to push any objective. And that's why if you have a DD spotting and you have a battleship behind it who's willing to shoot anything he sees, something like a Yamato with these incredibly powerful guns can be extremely rough to deal with. Of course, Yamato is not an easy battleship to play. It's fairly slow. It has no AAA, it has significant citadel, which is why I was so careful with all my broadsides, only really taking one significant risk, and that was reversing to create the crossfire on the Thunder. And most importantly, the guns are absolute monsters. But don't put yourself into overcommitted situations. That is my guide to battleship players. You can play aggressive, you can play central without being in a situation where you have no way of running. Sitting there nose in, being farmed to death. No one enjoys that, and it's very avoidable. Team score wise, we do break 3000 base on this one, which is of course always a nice score, especially with our gearing, I think, DCing right outside that cap, so we didn't really get any value out of him, and our Jutland also died very quickly, which limited our DD information. Knowledge of where the enemy DDs are is always very important and something you have to keep in mind. Don't put yourself in a position where you can be YOLO'd. And if you're going to get YOLO'd, like with the Drake, kite away. Detail report wise, 109 hits out of 270 shells fired, so a fairly decent accuracy there. 289,000 damage on it. We tanked a total of 105,000 damage, so not quite enough for the Dreadnought. We ate only 3 torps, that was from the Z52, a bit of HE, AP and so forth, but ultimately no real significant big chunks. Let me show you guys the recommended build, my recommended build for the Yamato. Alright, as usual, let me start with the modules. Consumable wise, always run the spotting aircraft. You are very good at blapping ships hiding in smokes. It gives you better scouting, you can lob shells over islands because you do have somewhat arky shells on the Yamato, and mostly because the fighter is just trash. Upgrade wise, secondary, aka auxiliary armaments mod keeps your AA and secondaries alive. Not that they really do much, but it's mostly for the fact that you never really lose your main turrets, so there's no point in running it. The main turrets on the Yamato are extremely well armored and you're not gonna lose them. Additional tankiness, better dispersion. The main guns are what the Yamato's selling point after all. Increased tankiness, especially if you're forced to sit, well, nose in, stern in, and you're being farmed. Concealment, and finally the legendary module. The legendary module on the Yamato is of course one of the best in the game. I rate it as one of the top 3 legendary modules in the game. Of course this will probably be changed, so we'll see how well this commentary holds up. But if you don't have access to this one, run the main battery reload module instead. Captain perks wise, Yamamoto Isoroku is the best possible captain for Yamato, not just because of the special perks like concealed reserves or second wind. Those are okay. The main selling point is the improved expert marksman. One of Yamato's greatest weaknesses is the fact that the turret traverse is absolutely abysmal, but with Yamato Izoroku and the improved EM, you can actually get it down to 52.5. Not anything stellar by any means, but still significantly better than the normal Yamato. Build-wise, run Priority Target, Adrenaline Rush, Superintendent, Fire Prevention, Concealment Expert, Expert Marksman, Expert Loader, and finally Jack of all trades. Don't underestimate Expert Loader, by the way. These Yamato guns, especially against DDs, if you do load HE, this HE hits for 7.3k, which is honestly a terrifyingly high HE alpha. So a DD trying to YOLO you, if you do have the right ammunition type loaded, can absolutely be devastated by that. Flag-wise, it is the standard Battleship loadout, which means you run reduction in fire, reduction in flooding, improved healing, faster consumables. I would like to see improved speed mixed in, because as I mentioned, this thing is not particularly fast. Additional bonuses, Hotel Yankee for ramming, potential secondary power, AA power, not that your AA really does much. I'm running the detonation flag, not because I recommend it for battleships, but because when I'm making these commentaries, I don't want to accidentally detonate. Overall, the Yamato is a ship that has been around since release, and it's still terrifyingly powerful. These guns, these 460mm guns, are still the only guns, well, Shikishima isn't released, so I can say they are still the only guns that are capable of overmatching 32mm of armor, which is basically the standard plating of the other tier 10 battleships. So the likes of the Thunder that somehow got 0 pens, for example, he's got 32mm basically all over the place. Anyway, that was my Yamato positioning guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I do want to highlight we are actually at what, 99.2k subscribers, so we are getting very close to 100,000 subs. And I spoke to War Gaming, and they have authorized a $3,000 giveaway. And I'm of course going to be adding some of my own money into the mix as well. So when we do hit 100,000 YouTube subscribers, we will be organizing some significant giveaways on this channel. As always though, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys next time.